And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight's episode, we're going to be joined by my guests, Chris and Christina. They are a couple of investigators from Crawfordsville, Indiana. They're hosting the first annual Crawfordsville Paranormal Convention, which is the thing that I've talked about of where I'm going to be speaking at on October 26th, coming up here pretty soon. They've written a book about Crawfordsville and all the weird things that have happened there, stuff with cryptids to UFOs and paranormal activity, and had their own experiences. So I thought it'd be a good time to have them on the show, kind of talk about some things, promote the upcoming convention, and I'm definitely looking forward to diving in there and talking with them. But before we do that, if you've ever had an experience and you would like to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tales, there's a couple things you can do. You can either send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Either way works for me, so just make sure to send a message one way or the other, and we will get something scheduled for a future episode. If you would like to help the podcast, you can continue to share it around if you have been. If you haven't, just share it. Word of mouth is the best way to help get the podcast out to new listeners. For every new listener, there is a potential new guest. So that means a potential new episode on the way. You can also help out by leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to Tinfoil Tales at. So if you listen on Apple or Spotify, just click the little review. And if you happen to write one out, I might read it on an upcoming episode and give you guys a shout out for it. For everything you guys do, though, just know that I appreciate you. But now we're going to go ahead and bring Chris and Christina on. Definitely looking forward to talking with them. Hope you guys enjoy the conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guests tonight, Chris and Christina. Thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
So we wrote the book Ghosts and Legends of Crawfordsville, Indiana. We also were the founders of Crawfordsville Paranormal Society, and we have created the I don't know what you call it exactly, the company Legend, Lore, and Hauntings, where we do ghost tours, we do talks on the paranormal, we do investigations, and we publish books through that.
Awesome. What kind of got you into that?
For me, it's sort of a family thing. My family has always been fond of what we call porch sitting, getting together and sharing stories. And there are a lot of paranormal stories throughout my family's history. So we were always getting together and passing them on and sharing them with each other. And that's kind of where my interest peaked in that. And then when we started dating, we found common ground in that because he's always been a big cryptid fan.
Yeah, I was brought up in a really religious upbringing, and I fell in love with the idea of giants in the Bible being still existing, and reading about giant skeletons and things like that, and knowing that I read an article that a giant graveyard was discovered just on the edge of Crawfordsville was a huge thing for me. And then when I read about the Crawfordsville monster, it just took off from there. And so I've just been down the rabbit hole of cryptids ever since. So 30 years I've been studying cryptids pretty much. And I'm totally obsessed with it. So with my love of cryptids and her love of the paranormal, we're an easy matchup. With a lot of things to talk about.
That's kind of how I am too. I love the cryptid stuff. I've loved paranormal stuff, UFO stuff as a kid. I was always into all sorts of monster stuff. So for me, doing this is almost like not so much what I wanted to do in life, but it gives me the opportunity, I feel like, to talk with people about some of the weird things that I always was interested in as a kid.
Well, and when you grow up in a town like ours, a community like ours, where there's a lot of weird and a lot of
Hmm.
strange, it's easy to fall in love with it. And it's easier to be in love with it, I think, than to be scared of it because people here are so open about it. But it is very a big thing to your upbringing. At least it was for us. Of all the people who would talk about it and the urban legends of the area and all the different creature sightings that your grandparents would tell you about and your uncles and aunts would tell you about, not to mention the ghost sightings and things like that have been seen in the area. And some of the extremely scary places that we've had over the years in our town, several of them have been renovated now and are still pretty eerie. But we've got some pretty creepy buildings in this town.
Hmm.
It's not very many people that you run into that haven't had some sort of experience here in Crawfordsville.
And even though it is a really religious town, it's not religious in such a way that they're against the idea of the paranormal or against cryptids or things like that, as you can see in other areas. And it wasn't something we were worried about when we decided to first start doing this publicly and not just being a private thing. Was what kind of pushback would we get? And we've never received any. We've always found that people are always open. They enjoy talking about it. We get invited to all these public groups to do talks, the places I would never ever suspect that they would want us to come to a talk at. But we get invited in all the time. We've got talks lined up constantly throughout the end of the year.
Yeah, with educational groups, different historical societies, different philanthropic groups ask us to come and talk about paranormal stuff with them.
We even had a church invite us to come in and speak to their youth group about it. So I mean, it was I would say one of the more strict religious churches in the area. So it was very interesting to get to the way it's so open here. And of course, when we wrote the first book, we were like excited, but on pins and needles for any negativity. And we've never had any negativity from the public in the area about it. We do have a lot of people driving me a little crazy about the next book. They're really excited about it. And I'm like, I need time to finish it.
We find a lot of people are just really interested in the history of these stories and these creatures and stuff like that in our area. And that's something that we are very passionate about too, is like the history of it.
Hmm.
As we believe that, kind of personally, that those stories and stuff that you grew up on, that's what shapes who you are and shapes your community. And so we love that everybody is like, tell us more. Like, we want to know back 200 years, where's the first sighting of this creature? Where did that happen? We want to know all the history.
I'm going to have to look more into your book and some of your research because with me being also here in Indiana, it's also one of those things where I don't get a whole lot of opportunity to go out and look for things, but if it's not too far away, it might pique my interest to go out a little bit and snoop around.
Well, yeah, and in this area, I mean, it's so easy too. We have the Rotary Jail down the street that literally you go to it, and very few people walk out of there without a sighting of something or a feeling of something or a sound they heard that they couldn't explain. The woods around here, Shade State Park, Turkey Run, those places are famous for Bigfoot sightings and dogman sightings and things like that nature, not deer. It's a very vibrant place. We have a lot of fairy sightings in the area. We have stories about family that we investigated because of fairies that were haunting their house. Fairy circles are known to pop up here everywhere. They're like crazy. So it's an interesting town and community, and I feel like anybody who likes is interested in this field, you can come here and find something that will intrigue you.
I've been to Crawfordsville a few times. I've actually been there a lot recently just because of work purposes. My job kind of took me a little bit all over the state. But 6 years ago, we camped at a creek. I forget, I think it was Sugar Creek. I think that's not too far from Crawfordsville area.
Right.
We went floating down the river. I didn't see anything that I
Yeah.
noticed, but
Uh, I find Sugar Creek's an interesting thing in town, because we don't have a lot of stories about Sugar Creek, but the woods that are off of Sugar Creek and all the little areas, you do hear lots of stories about sightings about different things out in those woods, but you don't hear much on Sugar Creek itself, except for there is a legend of a silver mine somewhere on Sugar Creek in Montgomery County, down by about Hinch area, that there's a lost silver mine down there. So that's an interesting thing that people like to go and investigate in their canoes and stuff like that, see if they can find it when they're going down Sugar Creek.
mhm.
Sugar Creek, it's not a cryptid, because we can prove that it exists. But Sugar Creek is known for its crinoids. Crawfordsville is one of the heaviest places you can find crinoids. You can just walk down Sugar Creek on any given day and just find handfuls of crinoids. And you find the full flower creatures, fossilized heads and everything of them all throughout Sugar Creek. And we even have 2 or 3 species that you can't find anywhere else in the world.
We have one place called Corey's Bluff where when you go by it, you can literally just see them in the side of the rock wall. All the crinoids. It's a very pretty sight.
I'm not really familiar what a crinoid is.
They are not called this so much, but probably when you were a child, they were referred to as Indian beads. But they're just these little stems of flowers that they would break apart and they would have holes in them, and Native Americans would make a lot of jewelry out of them. And so that's why they were the beads. But they are fossilized parts of an ancient creature that used to exist that looked like a giant flower.
It was very interesting because that was when this area was covered in water, and so it would dig its roots into the soil under the water, but the water wasn't very deep, so it'd be like 2 feet, 3 feet deep, and this creature would grow its stem up until the flower part would sit above the water, and it would catch bugs and other things and eat it.
Carnivorous.
So it's almost basically like the Venus flytrap to an extent.
Exactly, but they actually called it an animal and not a plant.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yes. We have a display of it at our local library for those who want to go in and actually just check out crinoids. They have quite a few specimens there for people to check out.
Now, if you want to get into the cryptids, is it along Sugar Creek, the giant graveyard?
Yes, there along Sugar Creek, there is where the giant graveyard is. But you can see the bluff where the graveyard was found as you travel down Sugar Creek.
But it is on private property.
Yes. I'm hopeful it comes spring that I will finally get some time to go and talk to the landowner about doing some work on checking out the ground and see what might still be there, because it was a large site that was uncovered, and so it would be interesting to see what got left behind, because it wasn't done educationally so much as they just dug up some stuff, thought it was cool, threw it out on the ground, and let anybody who wanted take a piece of it. And they even took the bones back to feed to the local dogs.
I've always heard stories of giants, but I've talked with someone recently from around here, and there's been stories of giants in Miami County.
Yes.
So I'm trying to wait to see if anything gets turned up from that. But even here, we have a very strange history around here too. And I think it's all tied to the rivers and the Native American lores and everything else that was through this area. And I'm assuming it all at one point, like even with Crawfordsville, because Crawfordsville is only about an hour and a half away from here, roughly. This whole area years ago, I'm sure, was pretty populated by Native Americans before the white settlers came over.
There were a ton of tribes. I actually saw a map a while back about all the tribes in Indiana, and I mean it's a ton of tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And there were regular battles between them. Shades State Park actually is called the Shades of Death. One of the reasons why, there's multiple, but one of the reasons why was because of all the Indian deaths that took place there between the battles between the Miami and other tribes.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's a very was a very populous place for the Indians. And Sugar Creek was a very in some of the other rivers and stuff in the area made it easy travel through the state of Indiana to go to different areas. And we do find we were talking about this on a podcast not too long ago that you see more cryptid sightings around areas with more waterways and caves, and there's caves everywhere in Indiana.
Where in this area alone, I can attest to what I had seen. I live between the Wabash River and the Eel River. So the Eel River is only about 2 miles north, and the Wabash is about 3 miles south. And you're familiar where the Miami County Fairgrounds Road is. It was on that road. Yeah. So that same road is where I had my run-in with, got me doing this whole show 17 years ago.
Yeah, that's a one of those things where I'm hopeful to come get a sighting of some type. I've never seen anything like that myself, but I believe it. I've got some friends who've seen some things out in the woods they couldn't explain. Me and a friend of mine.
We had a near encounter.
Yes.
We honestly have no idea what it was. We were out at this little spot. One side was surrounded by a cornfield. The other side was surrounded by woods. In this area, we were sitting outside the car, just hanging out. It was in the middle of the night. And then all of a sudden, everything went quiet, except we heard this giant animal of some sort, like, come charging through the corn at us. And we jumped back in the car and got out of there. Like, I mean, it was big.
There was some type of noise that it gave off that was nothing I've ever heard. And I'm an avid hunter. Me and my buddy, we go hunting for everything in the area. In Indiana, you can go hunting for a lot of things: deer, turkey, small game. We go. I almost
hit a turkey just a little bit ago. It come running out of the field right down the street
they're
from
everywhere.
me.
Well, and after we heard that and we left, we were probably about a half mile down the road, and he turns to me and he's like, "We have to go back." And I said, "I'm not going back." He goes, "We have to go back. We got to see what." I said, "Hey, there's no way." And I have never been back to that area. I'm not going back. I don't know what it was.
But it was interesting because, I mean, I've heard coyotes forever, and that would be the only thing that we have locally that I would say would make any kind of noise that would be even resembling to this, but it wasn't loud enough. It wasn't deep enough to be a coyote. And just the way it ran, or I assume was running and charging, the noise it was giving off as it was going through the cornfield was almost more like a truck coming through the cornfield than any kind of animal coming through it. When a coyote or a deer or anything like that goes through a cornfield, you don't even hear a noise. Even dogs make very little noise unless they're trying to make noise. So it was very eerie.
When you said it made a strange noise, I was kind of thinking to myself, did it sound metallic?
No, it sounded more like, have you listened to the Sierra Sounds?
Yeah.
It sounded more like that.
Yeah. As I actually just interviewed Ron Moorhead recently.
Yeah, it actually sounded a lot more like that. The way those sounds are. And it all the hair stood up on my arms. It was, I've never heard of anything like that. I was raised in the woods, spent every day in the woods my entire childhood, and I can't think of anything else I've ever heard or seen in the woods that would even make me scared.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been bit by snakes. I've been in there with just about everything you could find locally, and nothing terrifies me about the woods. But there was something there that was not friendly in any way, and I don't know what it would be, because we kept trying to figure it out, like a horse, but there's no horses near there. cattle, but that's not an area where we have any cattle in the area. We literally we tried everything to debunk what we were trying to, and we just can't figure it out.
Except go back.
Except go back. Yeah, she won't go back.
How many years ago was this?
Oh, well, about 12.
It's probably close to 12, yeah.
Chances are it's probably not there anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think?
Yes.
Do you think like the noise or whatever it was actually like trying to scare you off, or do you think it was actually running just to?
We felt at the time like it was trying to scare us off because as soon as she put the car in gear, it stopped. Like all sound of it completely stopped as soon as the car started moving, and that's one reason why I was keen on going back because I felt like it wasn't trying to come after us so much as it was just trying to make us leave the area we were in.
And the thing is I had been in that area a million times. I called it my thinking place. And one night I told him, I said, do you want to go? I want to go show you this is my thinking place. Like, it's so peaceful. It's so serene. It's quiet. And it was the first time I had brought him out there. And then it's no longer my thinking place.
I know this was back, I think, in 2012, which it should have been around the same time frame, I think. It was 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Where I used to work at, I was down around Carroll County, and someone locally from there had caught on a trail cam what appeared to be a mountain lion. So I don't know if they're really around here or not, but they were showing people at work that they caught that on their trail cam.
We regularly have them in the area. Mountain lions, bobcats are seen in our town in the little towns around Montgomery County. We've even had bobcats come all the way up in people's yards in some small towns. So we're really familiar with those. I've actually been out on a deer hunt and had a mountain lion come through the area while we were there. So I think if it was something like that, I would have recognized it, I think, only because of the fact that I have been in the woods with them before, and they're not something you edge away from, but I'm not really scared of them because I've been around them quite a few times, and I'm familiar with their pattern of movement, and as long as you stay away, they're not going to come at you too quick. You can usually back away pretty fast if you're paying attention. Now, a buddy of mine had one come all the way up to his tree stand and stand underneath it for a while, and that was a little scary. He wasn't happy about that, and but it's one of those things where you don't want to have that. We do have those regularly. I have heard of people thinking that that bear might have come back to the state because we don't have bear in this area, but we have had some hunters talking about that. They're not sure if it's a bear or what but they are seeing signs of some big animal in the woods in between Montgomery County, Park County, Fountain, and down into Putnam County.
I know. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in this area, in the past, we have reports of people seeing giant skunks that are the size of a barn.
That's a pretty big skunk.
Yeah.
Of course, that was back in 1845.
Yes.
What? I don't remember the exact year, but they had the beast of Busco or whatever that was the giant turtle.
Yeah, I want to get up for Turtle Day. We actually talked about going this year and didn't do it. That's an interesting story too. That giant turtle up there in that pond. I would love to have seen something like that because they can get that big if they aren't messed with or anything like that. Turtles can get gigantic. Even a snapping turtle can get quite large. We've come up across a few in Sugar Creek when we were fishing. But the creatures do seem to grow large in this state.
I think with to go back where you mentioned the bears, I think that recently I saw something that northern Indiana supposedly had a black bear. And I don't remember how long ago this was, but I've always wondered, like, when people say, oh, there's no bears not here anymore, wolves aren't here anymore, we don't have mountain lions. Do do the animals have a sense of where the imaginary state line is that they can't cross into Indiana? Like, how do you know they don't come
I know
back in here?
during the quarantine, there was a news story about the bears were crossing over the bridge from Kentucky into Indiana.
Yes. Well, you know, and I think a lot of times with you see those stories only because people haven't seen them. It doesn't mean they're not here. You just
Right.
haven't seen one. You know, and until someone sees one, they want to claim, well, they're not here anymore. But you see that with a lot of things. I mean, I remember hearing stories when we had deer kind of getting uh, few and far between in the county when I was little, and they were really restricting us on how many we could take out of the woods. And people were saying, "Oh, you can't find a deer in this part of the county anymore." Well, they were there. They were just, you know, we weren't saying them.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, and that's just one of those things that if you don't see it, everybody assumes that it's gone, but that doesn't mean nothing because I don't think an animal has any idea of where it's supposed to be and where
Yeah.
it's not supposed to be.
That's kind of where I've always been with it when it comes to people seeing. And I don't want to write off cryptids as misidentification because I hate when someone says, "Oh, you didn't see a Bigfoot or a dog, you saw a bear." You should be able to know the difference between a bear and something like a Bigfoot. It's just, I understand, like, if you only see, like, if it's on all fours and it's walking away, like, sure. But if you're seeing, like, with the silhouette behind me or whatever, like, that does not look anything like a bear to me. So I hate when people try and write that off to someone. They're like, "Oh, you didn't see this." Well, were you actually there? Like,
Right. Well,
did you see what I saw?
you have a lot of other things that get added in there, like the smell.
Hmm.
Bears don't have a horrible smell. And and a lot of people who come into contact with the Bigfoot like creatures talk about the smell, that it stands out to them drastically, the smell. And a lot of people talk about that they smell it before they see it, as well as the footprints. You can kind of tell when it's a bigger footprint. I mean, as someone who's been tracking and hunting his whole life, you can't I can't go out in the woods and see a bear track and think it was anything but a bear track. You know, if it's something that's that as big as most Bigfoot tracks have been recorded to be, there's no way it's a bear track. Even if they walked in the same footprint, it's not going to come up with that angle. I
Hmm.
mean, it's kind of a one of those situations where even if a person tries to say, well, you might not have noticed what it looked like, there's too many other things that you know about it. The way they sound, you know, is totally different. The way they operate, because if a bear's close to you, a bear's probably coming to you, not going away. Versus Sasquatch or Bigfoot is more likely to walk away from the stories.
Yeah, I just get annoyed when I hear people trying to rationalize it. And I understand, like, scientifically, there's no evidence to cryptids. That's why it's considered a cryptid. But
We thought coelacanths were extinct for years.
yeah, just because we don't know does not mean we know everything. And I think that's where it gets confusing for some people because just because science doesn't say it's here, everyone else writes it off. It's like, well, they didn't know a lot of things beforehand either.
Oh yeah.
Very similarly, the Crawfordsville monster, if you're familiar with that story, two guys, after it was seen by over 100 people in town, two guys came out and said it was a flock of killdeer, that it was just birds. And so the media took a hold of that and was just, oh, it's just birds. It's just birds. Crazy Crawfordsville saw birds and thought it was a monster. But the 100 people who saw the monster, they came back and they said, we know what birds look like. We're not stupid. We know it wasn't birds. But that's not widely reported. You have to go back and read those newspapers to see that the populace was upset that everybody was going, oh, it was just birds. And they said, it's not birds. We know what birds are.
What was the actual description that the witnesses had given for it?
Okay, so they do slightly differ, not much. Mostly it's just in the size of the creature, but almost every sighting is the size is 8 feet long,
18 feet wide.
18 feet long, 8 feet wide, 18 feet long, 8 feet wide. Sorry, and then it's got some type of red eye, but it had no visible head or tail. So when they say it's a red eye, you kind of have to think about it more along the lines that it could have been anywhere on the thing, because of the fact that they did say it had no readily visible head or tail. It had the what is the word?
They said it looked like it was white floating drapery,
Right.
and that it moved through the air as if it had fins, and that it gave off a heat, and that when it came near to people, people felt nauseous when it came close to them.
And the way they described the way the heat and the nauseous, a lot of times it makes you think of radiation, how
Mhm.
you'd feel if you get up next to radiation, or like extreme heat. But yeah, they said it floated, that it didn't move in any like straight pattern, that it floated up and down vertically, that it uh, moved in kind of a weird pattern, not like a deer or something else. I apologize, a bird or something.
But like it was
Floats.
swimming through
Yeah,
the
it was
air.
like it was swimming through the air, but it was having trouble. They talk about like a mechanical noise almost, like it was in pain. And the other weird thing is it showed up at the exact same time 2 days in a row to the almost the minute. The first night it showed up between 1 and 2 a.m. And the second night it showed up between 1 and 2 a.m., which is very strange that this thing just shows up at that time for
And
no.
some people were terrified looking at it, but other people were not terrified at all. They just watched it kind of with awe and were fine. So some people were scared, but other people were not scared looking at it.
What year did this happen?
1891, September 4th and 5th.
It sounds to me a lot like almost like a UFO. If you go like with the radiation and everything else, like to me, it's almost like one of those old UFO stories. And if you, based off the description or whatever, like I've seen things recently, they called it the squid, the thing that was floating through the air, like back in January, they released the footage or whatever, and it almost had like weird shape looking tendrils to it and everything else. Like when you were describing it, it's, for some reason, I just kept popping in my head. And before you even got to the whole radiation part, I was like, almost sounds like one of these weird squid-like jellyfish UFO things they've got. And then,
Right. And it is considered the very first UFO in the nation, because it was the very first one they ever wrote about in a newspaper.
Mhm.
And so they made a big deal about that it was the very first UFO ever written about. But it's a fascinating subject. The articles, I mean, the interviews still exist from the time period. In 1910, 1911, somewhere around there, a gentleman Vincent Gaddis, came to Crawfordsville, and he did interviews with the people who were still alive who had seen it. And he went on to write an article about it in the Doubt magazine for the Fortean Society. But those interviews still exist. We're attempting to get our hands on them, but it is not easy.
Fun fact, Vincent Gaddis, who did those interviews and wrote about the Crawfordsville Monster, coined a term we're all familiar with, and that is the Bermuda Triangle. He came up with that term.
you don't really hear a lot about the Bermuda Triangle anymore.
Yeah. Well,
it seems like all the strange has kind of disappeared.
Well, yeah. Well, you don't really, the last few years, we haven't really heard a lot about any of the triangles, the Dragon Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle,
The Alaska
the
Triangle.
Alaska Triangle. They've all kind of seemed to be hibernating, because we haven't heard a whole lot about any of them in recent days.
So
We did something about Loch Ness the other day, though. That was interesting for the first time.
There was a recent sighting or something.
Yeah, someone has a recent sighting, and I mean that's interesting considering it's been quite a few years since we've had anything like that come out and about.
That has been my goal, is to interview someone who's actually had some sort of a lake monster encounter. I've had a couple people say they've seen something, and I've reached out to them about doing an interview, but I've never actually confirmed anything. They never get back with me, so it's still on my bucket list. I want to talk to someone that's had like a lake monster encounter.
Yeah.
Champs.
Yeah. Well, and that's always frustrating in this field too, is because a lot of people will like post things on Facebook. Yeah, I saw this, and you message them, and they're like, they never answer you or email you back, and it's like, oh, come on, I want to know more. I deal with that every day because I'm always reaching out to people. They'll message our website or they'll message our Facebook. Hey, I've had a sighting in Montgomery County. Oh, great, give me the details, and I never hear another word. I'm like, come on, I need to know this stuff. We're trying to build an archive, and which people can check out. If they ever go to the Crawfordsville Public Library, they can ask for Nellie Craig if she's working, and she can pull out the archive on the haunted history of Montgomery County and Crawfordsville that we've been slowly building for the last 10 years.
We have, I will say, so we like to take any story anybody wants to tell us. We're here for it. And then we will do further research and we'll go to that area. We'll look at it. We'll figure out what we can. And we actually, we had a person contact us about a story once, and they gave us like a detailed description of this creature that they had seen. And they told us kind of what had been going on that night. We know that they were partying a little bit when they saw it. They told us where it was. And we went out to the area, and in the daylight, the exact description they gave us of what this creature saw, there is a bramble bush that looks exactly like what they saw. So we think that they'd been drinking a little bit, maybe, and they saw this and was really scared.
It's actually a little scary. When we first went by there, it was dusk, and I'm like, what is that? And we drove back there the next day during the daylight to actually take a look at it. And it literally looks like some kind of scarecrow person standing out there along the road. And if you just get a quick glimpse of it, or you see it in the dark, it's terrifying.
So we like those stories too, but we like to hear anything, and we will research it as thoroughly as we can.
We always like when we find something we can't explain.
Yes.
Like we have an EVP from an investigation we did. We locked it. We went in and we locked the house. I made sure every door, every window, everything was locked. We took the family out to dinner. We came back, and when we came back, we took the digital recorder that had been running the whole time, and we listened to it. And there was just so much going on while the family was gone. The dog, who was elderly, could barely walk, never barked, almost couldn't see or smell anything, went nuts for 30 minutes straight. There was somebody on it talking, and there's nobody in the vicinity. And you could hear like a pin drop on this recorder. You could hear me leave the building when I locked the door and I'm saying, hey, I'm leaving. You hear me leave and the door closed. So if someone had come in, they would have heard the door open, but that's not on there. But you hear the cabinet doors opening and closing,
rapidly opening and closing in succession.
And they're magnetically locked.
They're not only magnetically locked, but they had child locks on them because they had small children in the house. But you can hear all the cabinets opening and closing.
You hear someone run or something running up and down the stairs in an area the dog can't even go to because there was a gate. The dog couldn't even get there. And something or someone is running up and down the stairs. And you hear that. So it was a very interesting EVP. It was probably the best one we've ever caught because we just couldn't explain anything on this thing.
Yeah. EVPs are always weird for me because I don't know what it's picking up. Like, it's strange to think like you're hearing all these things and you're like, I always try and write things off explainable at first. And if you can't rule out what it is by common stuff, then look at it as paranormal. And for me, when I hear the really, really creepy things, I'm just like, oh, because you just don't know.
Yeah, we're really diligent when we do that to try to control the field as much as possible so that there can be nothing contaminating it, as well as trying to make sure that like we can explain everything going on. Like if the furnace turns on or a fan turns on or something, I want to be able to explain that. And so I check everything out ahead of time as thoroughly as humanly possible. And I go through these EVPs and I'm like, well, that's nothing, that's nothing, that's nothing. And if it's even something that I could pull into something, I'm like, no, that's nothing. Mm-hmm. And this was like the one time I'm like, I don't know what to do. I can't figure it out.
A reputation is kind of like Debbie Downers because people would come in and they would be like, this place is so haunted. And then we would go in there and explain every bit of everything away. And they would be so upset with us. So when we do have those little moments of like, okay, I can't tell you what was going on there, I don't get it, that really is exciting.
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff that I would do too, because I've only been out on 2 investigations with a local paranormal group, and I don't remember what they're called. And if I did, I wouldn't bring it up anyways. But this was, I think, back in probably about 14 years ago, 14 or 15 years ago. So it's been a while. And we went out to, if you're familiar with Miami County, you've ever heard of Okefenokee. Like they claim that's
Yes.
like one of the most haunted areas or whatever. I've camped out there 20 years ago and I never had any weird experience other than we heard noises and we lit it up with a paintball gun and it ended up being a duck. So we hear a duck start squawking off and flying away. I was like, well, it wasn't a demon or whatever they claim is on here. But we were out there and they were getting all these little readings on their meters and everything then was paranormal, paranormal, paranormal. And the other place we went to was the old circus building that's out that way, like where they used to keep the animals and everything else. Well, that place was built in the 1800s. So you hear creaks and everything was paranormal. It's like, no, it's just probably wind and settling because this building is ancient. So
I have that at my workplace. We have I work at the local college here, and we have one building that's the one of the oldest buildings on campus. It's not technically the oldest, but it's the oldest on that campus because 2 other buildings were brought to the campus from the original campus. But that building, because of the way it was made and the age of it now, when you walk up and down that building during the daytime, you won't even notice it because of all the sounds in the building. But if you go through that building at night, you'll hear a lot of noises. And what those noises are you before you got there. So, like, if you walk down the hallway, you'll hear your footsteps from the other side of the building that have just now released out of the wood. And we've proven it over and over again because a lot of our security guards back in the day were scared to death of this building at night because I always hear the foot like someone's walking behind me. It's like, it's you. It's just catching up to you.
it's the reverberations finally coming out.
Exactly. And it's a very interesting building. It's a beautiful building, but it's very funny that happens because it's funny because that building doesn't have very many stories about it. The none actually that I can think of off the top of my head. Uh, and several other buildings that are newer on the campus have some horrible ghost stories. So it's interesting that the oldest building, the one everyone's scared of, doesn't really have anything, and it's all just because of the wood and the way things were built back in the day and things like that, and the age that actually is creating that sound that scares everyone.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. Just
Yeah, we always
I'd be the one that hear the footsteps and get creeped out.
they like to play a game with new people. They like to take them in there at night and be like, okay, we're gonna have you clean this building and we're gonna leave, and they'll stand outside the room and wait till you're like freaking out to come in and try to talk to you. Hey, it's like, no, you're okay. There's nothing in here. We're just playing a trick on you. So
I'm not one that gets creeped out very easily, but there's certain times where even where I live now, like if I go out back and there's no light and I have to go back to where the animals are, like sometimes just there's an eerie feeling when you're back there in the pitch blackness. So if I get that, I pull out my phone. I'm just kind of look around with the phone, make sure. But for the most part, like
Preservation kicking in.
Yes, definitely.
I said, for me, I'm not one that's afraid of the dark. I like sitting in the dark. I don't mind the dark. But like when you go outside, and especially like right now next to me is the corn, and I'm always thinking like I step out of this barn now, and right next to me is a cornfield, and what's on the other side of this wall waiting for me to coming out of the cornfield. So I've always got that little bit of paranoia in the back of my head sometimes. Like I don't expect something to ever come out after me, but like my luck. I've talked about so much crap out here and all this other things that I've manifested my own paranoia in my head. So I never know what's going to happen.
Well, I always had that because I've always been a big skeptic of the paranormal side of it. You know, I'm a huge cryptid guy, but I've always been more skeptic on the other side. And yeah, have you ever been to Hotel Attica back in the day before they tore it down?
No.
Okay, so Hotel Attica, we went there for our honeymoon. That's how crazy we are about this stuff. And it's supposed to be was one of the most haunted hotels in Indiana at one time. And we went in that place and it terrified me. Um, I could have swore that some woman walked into our room right through the door. And to this day, I don't know if I was dreaming or awake. And I want to try to claim I was dreaming, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't. And I got literally pulled off of bed. I'm a 300-pound guy, and somehow I went off the bed feet first, over a couch onto a floor, and I'm not sure how it happened because there's no way I could have physically moved myself in that direction. But I could have swore this lady pulled me off the bed, and I was terrified. I woke her up because I was freaking out.
I was having the best night's sleep of my life. And then I woke up and he's just sitting on the edge of the bed, like shaking, eyes wide. And he was like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what this was. And he's like, I know that she came right through the door and she grabbed me. And I was like, I was slept good.
And I've always tried to play it off as maybe I was sleeping. But I mean, it was just, there was something too real about it. And I don't know how I got off the bed in that way. It terrified me. But I found it interesting because of, all those years of me saying, "Oh, there's nothing. It's nothing." I'm trying to be the skeptic and trying to debunk it all, and then all of a sudden, whoops! Now I'm scared to death.
That's kind of how my mentality's always been. Is I'm always more skeptical about everything, but at the same time, it's like when you've had experiences, it's hard to be a skeptic when you've experienced some stuff that shouldn't happen.
Right.
So it changes your whole mood.
Open to that, because I have a member of my family that has a little bit of clairvoyance, and she knows when people are going to experience something traumatic, and she'll hear voices when it happens, and she'll immediately alert everybody, say, I've heard the voices, they've called out to me, everybody needs to shelter in place. And sure enough, something terrible, and it's usually a death in the family, comes immediately after that. So because I've grown up with that member of my family and she has never once been wrong, ever, I've always been more open to that kind of stuff. And so to me, I'm just like, yeah, this happens. It exists. Even if I didn't experience that, I absolutely believe you if you tell me you did it, because I've experienced that with my family.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know how she couldn't believe it, because she has the creepiest little sister on the planet. And her adopted little sister is like, I swear that girl astral projects or has a demon that follows her or something, to the point that she would go to her grandma's for visitation and be gone all the weekend, and we would still see her running around the house. It was really creepy, and this is the creepiest kid I've ever seen in my life. She's almost 16 now, something like that.
She's 14.
14. I never know their ages, but and she still like creeps me out. She's my favorite person on the planet, but she still creeps me out. And there's just something about her that is special.
Well, it's just because one time when she was about 8 years old, we caught her talking to the wall, and we said, "Honey, what are you doing?" And she just very slowly turns around, and it's almost like her head moved without her body moving. That's how slow she was turning around, and she just smiled and went, "Nothing." And he can't get over that.
Yes.
That would creep me out too. Not gonna lie.
I don't like creepy kids. Creepy kids scare me. I don't want to hear a creepy kid story or a creepy doll. Creepy dolls, I'm out. Creepy kids, I'm out.
Yeah, she doesn't like Chucky, especially when I put the doll on the front porch when she moved into our new home, walked into our house for the first time at night and saw him sitting on the porch. She didn't like that very much.
I don't mess with dolls.
Well, when this would be a good segment or a segue into talking about the upcoming conference, because I'll be speaking at that, and you don't like creepy kid stories or whatever. Well, I've definitely got my own personal one that I can share to creep everyone out, because it's something that we still deal with today.
That'd be good. Yeah, the convention's October 26th from 10 to 4. It's open to the public, free to the public. I guess it's obviously open to the public. Yeah. We've got a lot of people coming that have already RSVP'd. We've got 30 vendors currently. We do have a small facility, so we're trying not to go too crazy, and we're trying to give people plenty of space to walk around. We have 4 authors, 5 podcasts, 1 bookstore, 2 haunted locations, and 7 investigative teams so far, all planning to attend.
And
Oh yeah, and MUFON. I forgot to put MUFON on there. MUFON will be there.
I actually, I've been promoting it on most of the recent episodes. I've been promoting all the ones that I'm going to be coming up on. So I've got the Bigfoot conference. I was supposed to do another one and that actually just got canceled. So for anyone listening, Bigfoots and Bruised is not happening. But there was that one, and then there's the Para Unity one here in Miami County, and then your
Which
guys.
is amazing. We went to it last year and we had a blast.
yeah, we love that.
I'll be there this year too. I'm supposed to be speaking of that one as well. So I figured for the Miami County one, since it's on the same road where I had my run-in with the weird thing in the road, I will talk about that since it's literally a mile down the road from where the
Right.
thing is. And then for your guys' stuff, I figured I'd talk more about some of the paranormal stuff that I've dealt with.
Awesome. It'll be a lot of fun. I think we have 2 investigative teams. I can't remember. I've got the schedule. We've got 2 or 3 podcasts talking. We've got MUFON talking, and we've got an investigative team talking. One of the podcasts though is I don't think they're talking about their podcast so much. They're talking about their book they put out recently, Haunted Dearborn County. Is I think more what they're going to be focused on. But it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. And then we are trying to partner up with some different locations in town for people to visit afterwards. Like we'll be doing ghost tours downtown ourselves because we do that on Saturdays anyway. And then the Rotary Jail, I'm not sure what they're doing. They're discussing putting on an event that night, or just allowing people to sign up for an event later in the month or something. I'm not 100% sure what they're doing. I haven't got a chance to talk to them. I've been a little bit busy. We have another fair that we're hosting, so I've been extremely focused on that because that's coming up in 2 weeks. So I'm trying to get that over with so that I can get more focused on the October one. But it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a costume contest.
There's going to be some door prizes, and a couple of big things that we'll be giving away with the door prizes are some investigations. So a couple of the groups are going to give away a spot on their investigation teams for certain places.
Yes.
So all free for the person who wins.
Yes.
Now, it sounds like a great time. And then, like I said, are you going to be at the Miami County one too?
No, unfortunately, this year we are not going to be able to because we're already booked to do a talk that day. We knew it was going to be happening, but when someone local was like, "Hey, can you talk that day?" and that's the only day they could have us, we were kind of like, "Oh, we can drive up there, or we can talk local." Let's talk local, just because we do have a local book. It is a little bit easier to sell our book whenever we do these talks. So we were disappointed in not getting to go because we had a blast last year when we went.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was a great time. And it's just like we were really looking forward to going to the Bigfoot convention down in Nashville, and now we can't go to that because we've got other commitments. So that was disappointing as well because we really wanted to go check it out because it looked like a lot of fun as well. So we're hopeful that we'll get to go some conventions outside of our town soon. We are planning one in September to go down to Evansville, but it's just when you get into this and you should get on the back end and you start being the host and doing those kind of things, it makes it harder to get out and visit them.
I've only been to the 2 here in Miami County because, again, I live like 4 miles from the area, so it's not that hard for me. It's like one road up and then a couple miles over.
Right.
But the Bigfoot one in Nashville's probably my longest trek, and then obviously coming down to Crawfordsville is a little distance, but it's not nearly as far as Nashville.
Right.
But no, I've signed up for several different ones, and I tried to get on Monster Fest over in Ohio, and it was already completely full. And then I tried to get on another one down in November. It's in, I think, Louisville, and they didn't choose me. I was like, oh, whatever.
Well, and it's one of those things where like it's so I tried to reach out to specifically Indiana podcasts because I really wanted the guys in Indiana to be able to get other people in Indiana to know about their podcasts who might not know. But it was really fast with booking up. It was the first 2 weeks after we announced it and put out the application. Oh my Lord, all the people was coming out of the woodwork to have a booth. So next year we are going to try to plan a much bigger venue so we can have a lot more people come because of it.
Yeah. This year we were kind of testing the waters to see how many people would want to come, what we would have, and we just kind of wanted to show the community that there's an interest in this, and we just hope to keep getting bigger.
Yeah. Well, it was shocking. Like, we've had so many people RSVP that they're coming, that are not vendors, that are just people wanting to come and check it out. I've been amazed because I was like, oh my Lord, the first year, honestly, the first year I thought, oh, we'll get a little bit of people coming in the door, the diehard fans, but we may not get a whole lot of others, but the amount of people talking about it and looking forward to it and hitting us up on, hey, when is this happening again? Has been amazing. So we're really hoping for a really good turnout, a lot of fun. I'm hoping it doesn't get too big. You want it to be big, but you don't want it to be so big that people want to stand outside the lines all day. But it'll be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. We're really looking forward to planning the future ones. I've already got some groups that couldn't make it this year that are interested in coming next year. So I definitely want a bigger venue because I don't want it. I hate excluding people. I hate telling people, sorry, I don't have a space for you. I want everyone who wants to show up there to be there. And of course, I feel like, being able to have podcasters and YouTubers and things like that, people who you can meet and then go back home and listen to their stuff is like the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Especially networking with each other and having the different podcasters from the different sections of Indiana come together and be able to meet and interact with each other if you haven't already, because you might know a lot about what's going on in your area, but you don't know what's going on in this quadrant of Indiana. So being able to share those things back and forth, I think is a great opportunity.
Yeah, and we've heard from some others about, hey, we should maybe start thinking about putting on these conventions in other parts of the state that don't have anything. For those who can't make it all the way to Crawfordsville or all the way down to Evansville or all the way up to Fort Wayne area, and so that's been something that's been an ongoing conversation I've now been seeing between different people when they've contacted me about, hey, this is really something we need to get started in more than just one area, as well as people wanting to get together. We might end up, if we can get a venue large enough, we may end up next year having to do panels where people can get in and really, really go at it and talk to people and go on the full 9 yards, because it seems like something big enough and well received enough to need it.
I come into this from a background of playing in bands. So, and I don't want to be Debbie Downer or negative or whatever, but when I feel like if there's a lot of the conventions going on and like, oh, there's one here and oh, there's another one like 40 miles away, I feel like people start to be like, well, I don't need to go to that one because I can go to the next one. And then like,
yep,
that's how it was when I played shows. Like, well, I don't need to go to watch your band this weekend because you're playing somewhere else in 2 weeks. So like, that's the mentality I have about it. Like, if it starts to be overdone, then people they lose the interest in it because it's not something anymore. So if it's
a fine balance of, there has to be enough shows to keep people entertained without going crazy and be spread out enough so that people can get to it without driving forever.
Yeah.
2 hours.
Yeah. Anytime you get above 2 hours, it starts becoming difficult for people to get there.
So the hour-long 50 to 60 mile radius is probably about the farthest that some people will go. But even, I think with it being free, and that's what the one that they do here in Miami County, it's always been free to my knowledge. I think that's what attracts so many people, because they're curious and they don't have to pay out.
Yeah.
Like the Bigfoot conferences or whatever, they've been doing ticket sales, which I understand. They got to cover their cost or whatever. But I think that's part of the reason why some of them might struggle because not everyone wants to fork over $40 for a ticket for the day. Like
Oh yeah,
that's kind of expensive in my opinion for something, but I
yeah,
don't.
exactly. And
Well, and we know there's going, we have a lot of vendors and a lot of people that are coming will be selling their books and selling
Mhm.
things like that. And we would much rather people come in and spend their money with those people than have to pay to get into the venue.
right, and we
Yeah.
were very careful about that when we set everything up. We wanted to make sure that all the costs would be covered without having to charge an individual. That was very important to us, was making sure that everything was cheap for the vendors as well as free for the people coming in. Because that just at the end of the day was the most important thing, was just, I want people to be able to come in and have a good time.
Yeah. So I don't have a whole lot. I've got a couple shirts and some of the little book that I wrote. But other than that, like I'm bringing my recording stuff. So for anyone that pops by and has something to talk about, they can sit down with me and record a little segment.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people will want to do that because a lot of people like that kind of stuff. They want to be able to talk about their experiences. They want to be able to get those things out there and feel like someone's listening to them, and not just always the same people they talk to. Um, and I think people are really going to enjoy it. I think you'll see a lot of people who've never been to anything like this before that'll
Mhm.
show up. They won't know exactly what to expect. So we're really hoping that they'll have a really good time, and they'll get excited enough that they'll want us to come back and do it again next year.
Yep. Well, if it looks, I've creeped around on Facebook and I've looked at the event and I see all the people interested and all the people saying they're attending or whatever. So if you even get like half of that, it's a good turnout.
Oh yeah, oh
So,
yeah.
I'll keep my fingers crossed that it ends up being really good because everything so far that I've seen for that one and all the other ones I'm supposed to be at looks like they're all supposed to be very well attended. So,
Well, and I think that was a lot of hard work to get people aware of it, but it was definitely worth it to us to make sure people knew about it and they knew that it was going to be free, that they were going to have a good time, that we were going to differentiate between the cryptids, the paranormal, the UFOs, so that we had different things for each person who wanted
mhm.
different things.
Yeah, that's probably the best route to go with. 'Cause I know like they've been doing local UFO meetings here in my town, which when that first happened, I thought, like, why in Peru having UFO meetings? Kind of strange, but I was there back in March and I was up in the one in Fort Wayne, so I spoke at both of them. And you just meet a lot of people. Like I've talked to several different people. They come up and told me about the stuff that they've seen or whatever. And I feel like for a lot of people, they're not able to go out to go to work and be like, hey man, I saw some crazy stuff the other night. Like they're gonna get looked at like they're crazy or funny or something, like.
Right.
But when you're able to go somewhere and actually sit down and talk with people that have an open mind or something like in this situation, they're more apt to listen to, like someone's going to listen to them and they feel a little bit better because sometimes people don't get to talk about this stuff. And that's all they need to do is get it off their chest. So that's why I do what I do.
We have a monthly meeting at the local library here in Crawfordsville. It's called Mystery of History Club. And we get together and we talk about all of the odd and weird things that come through history. Like one of our first things was on Atlantis. We've talked about Oak Island. We've done the Bermuda Triangle. This month we're doing Bigfoot. And we're just going to get together and talk about everything that, all our own personal research or thoughts and feelings on it. And it's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. People just really enjoy talking about these things and meeting like-minded people.
No.
And not feeling ridiculed, because you do go out and you say something about you had an experience and someone's like, oh, you're off your meds. But being able to talk to like-minded individuals who are at least open to what you've experienced is very important. In any aspect, where on it's paranormal or where on it's something totally different. You need that group to be able to talk to, and I feel like especially locally, this is going to give the people here who may not have knew that, hey, there was other people in town who was also into this stuff, somewhere to go and talk to, and meet each other and make a bigger field.
And it's people from all backgrounds. We have former teachers, lawyers, and all kinds of people are a part of this club.
Yeah. That's one of the things like I wish that I was more involved with. Like I need to look more into like going out and meeting with people and stuff. Like I'm very antisocial. It's strange that I host a podcast and I talk to people, but outside of that, like I'm not a very talkative person. Like I go out and I do things here and there, but like I'm not a very outgoing person to just go strike up a conversation with complete strangers on the street.
I totally understand that because I am extremely antisocial. I have agoraphobia, and I literally won't leave the house unless she makes me. Um, and so going these conventions and doing these talks, like she's got one scheduled for me to do 100% by myself, which never happens. She always is right here beside me to keep me calm. Is like the biggest thing I'm afraid of for the entire year. But it also has been so fun to do and meet people that I would have never talked to in my life because I would have never had the courage to walk up and talk to them just because I'm just not that person. Even to the point where I work, there's a lady there who is a huge Bigfoot fan. She loves Blurry Creatures, the podcast. She's obsessed with it. And I would have never known that she was into this stuff. But when we wrote our book, a lot of people in town knew our names, and they're like, "Hey, so and so wrote a book," and she stopped me and started talking to me about it, and it allowed me to have a conversation and a friendship with someone I would have never spoken to. And she had worked there for over a year. I never talked to her the entire time because I'm just not that type of person. I'm extremely antisocial, but this field definitely brings that realm where you can meet people and talk to people and still be in your own little bubble at the same time. And I'm sure podcasting helps with that when you talk through a computer and not have to be face to face.
Who would have thought Bigfoot would bring us all together?
Well, the reason I did this, I just did one Sunday, but I'm actually doing in face-to-face interviews now in this little studio. So there's a few people from my local area that I somewhat know, and I'm going to let them come over, but I'm not going to random strangers off the internet come and know where I live.
Oh yeah, definitely. Nobody wants that. You know what can happen. That's why you need a nice public venue for.
Yeah. If I didn't live where my studio area is, then it would be a little different. If I had like my own little off the wall place, and sure, but no, this is still where I live, so I don't want everyone knowing where I live.
Right? Yeah, that's always one of those things where you got to protect that. You don't want everybody to. Just because as soon as you get one person that finds out, they got to troll you.
We've had people contact us and ask if they could buy a copy of our book off of us. And then I've had to stop him from giving out our address and tell him, how about we'll go meet them someplace? Don't tell them where we live.
Well, I forget because in the community, a lot of people know us because she works at the library and I worked for the local government for over 20 years. And so a lot of people know us. So I forget. Oh, not everybody knows where we live. We shouldn't give that information just out willy-nilly. And it's like our phone number. She's like, don't give our phone number out except to certain people.
Yeah.
So I was very hesitant on like, oh, should I give my phone number out to the vendors or not? And I think I sent everyone my phone number. So just because I'm like, I should do this.
I got business cards made up and I was almost tempted to put my number on there. Then I was like, you know what? I don't want to give out business cards and random people calling me because I don't know who they are because I'm terrible with answering the phone. But that's one of those things. It's like, how do you, like for me, I have all these cards. I had like 1,000 cards printed up, but I'm not the type of person who just walks up to random people and like, here, have a business card. Like this is like not what I do. So
we put them on our table and a lot of people come by and pick them up. Of course, ours just has our website, our Facebook, and our personal the email for our group to get a hold of us. And we get a lot of messages that way. And a lot of people pick up the cards there. We also put a card in every one of our books that we sell, we sell ourselves, so that they have our card that way. And just one of those things where it's hard to do it when you don't want to just scan stuff out to people. She's better at that than I am. She's much more like, here's my card, and I'm like, don't talk to me.
Or, if you're trying to schedule something with somebody, instead of saying, hey, let's do this on August 21st or whatever, say, I'm going to write that down for you, and write it down on the back of your card and hand it to them.
My card's double-sided, so I don't really have anything to write on. I made the mistake. I have a QR code on the back. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a black dot over it now because I apparently, when I made the card and the QR code that takes them to my website, they expected me to pay $10 a month for that QR code to work.
Oh, that's crazy.
So I didn't pay it, so I started taking them to like the domain place for them where you're supposed to go in there and pay for it. So I've had to go through 1,000 business cards now and put a black splotch over the card because I refused to pay $10 a month for that to be active.
I feel your pain. I printed our first business cards and I put the wrong email on them, and it's not even the email we have. I some reason I put Gmail instead of Yahoo, and so I had to literally go through and buy a whole new box of business cards just because I did that. I was kicking myself. It's like, I know they're not that expensive, but that's still money I wasted.
Yeah. So I'm almost finished. Like, I think I probably will have to restock on some of the larger sizes of shirts because for some reason everyone wanted like extra large or 2X or 3X. I was like, I didn't order I only ordered like 2 3Xs, and I've been asked for like 5 people that wanted 3Xs. So I sold out of them like in the first week. So I was like, I got to restock on stuff before I even go out to these shows because I don't even have a lot of the sizes that I was going with.
Well, we found in this field from talking to different people who do merchandising that the XL is the most popular size,
Mm-hmm.
and 2X is the second most popular size.
Yeah.
And I guess we're just all fat.
That's what I wear a 2X, but so I've got a couple 2Xs left, but I don't have any 3X. And someone asked me if I had a 4X. I was like, I didn't even order one of those because those are expensive. They're like $13 just for the shirt alone, plus to get it printed on. So
yeah, I feel your pain. I wear a 4X.
I say a lot of people will upsize by a few dollars. That if you go higher than a 3X, they'll upcharge.
Well, actually, a lot of places have gone over a 2X. They'll charge an additional fee for up to a 3X, and then they'll charge another fee to go up to a 4X.
Where I order my shirts from, anything over a extra large is upcharged. So there's a couple dollars for 2X, there's a couple more dollars for 3X. Like, it just, every size up, there's like an additional $2 to $3.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of people will they'll transpose that over to the customer. And that way they're not eating it in their profit.
Well, and I think most people are used to that.
Yeah. We figured that out with our books real quick. When we were selling our books at first, we were underselling them, and then depending on the time of the year when I buy the books from the publisher, they change in price. And so I figured out real quick, I need to just sell them for what the book says. Mm-hmm. Otherwise I'm eating money.
Yeah.
I don't need to be doing that.
I need to get a copy of the book from you guys when I'm down there because people that I've interviewed, I'm trying to get copies of all their books, and I'm keeping them all out here too. And like,
you were supposed to receive one. If you've not got it, I will contact the publisher. All the podcasts that we've done we're supposed to receive one from the publisher free of charge.
Yeah, I've never gotten anything.
Yeah, I will reach out to them and make sure they send it over. I'll have to get your information again if I don't have it.
Do you have a PO box or anything like that?
No, but I can send you my address to the email. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, because all the podcasts are supposed to have it. I might have overlooked. Yeah. It's been crazy. But yeah, because that was one of the big things is with our publisher was great is any media that we do, they automatically get a free book from the publisher, which is great because it's like, yeah, they should get our book.
Yeah. No, I never received anything as far as I know. Like I get the mail every day and I've never gotten anything. So, but I have gotten a few books from some of the people that I've interviewed. They send me digital copies. I prefer to have the printed version just because.
Me too.
I'm the type of person I'd rather have so I can sit here and see it.
Yeah. We'll make sure that gets done so you can get a copy of it.
Would you like to let everyone know a little bit more about the book before we wrap this one up?
You can pick our book up on Amazon, at Barnes and Nobles. Look, Indiana stores, a lot of them have it in stock on the shelf, but if you don't, you can get it on their website. You can get it pretty much on any book selling website. If they sell books, they have our book. We'll have books at the convention that you can buy and that will be signed. If you want them signed, some people don't. I don't know why, but some people don't want them signed, but we are happy to sign them for you, free of charge. We don't charge for signing. But our book is about all the legends and the ghosts of Crawfordsville. We really made sure to document everything. So 95% of what's in that book, you will see an article or a book or something related that I have referenced in the book, so that you can actually see that this is documented evidence. This isn't just somebody telling me a story. I literally have the documents from the newspapers from the 1800s, the early 1900s, of these sightings happening. And as well as we did a real good job of trying to get all the local legends to Crawfordsville, all those urban legends that we were terrified of as a child. We put them in there and gave every detail we could about the stories, kind of thing. So it's been a lot of interesting, because for some reason some of that stuff hasn't translated to the new youth of Crawfordsville, so they've been fascinated with all these stories that we grew up with.
It is 200 years of history of Crawfordsville. There's a couple stories of some of the outskirts of Crawfordsville, but it mainly hits just the city. The next book we're going to focus on more Montgomery County until the outer areas. But also as a deep dive into the history of spiritualism here in Montgomery County, because it was a very big thing, and it thrived in this county even when surrounding counties it did not take off. And so that is what it is. It is a history of spiritualism, paranormal cryptids and things of Crawfordsville for the past 200 years.
I will make sure for anyone listening to include a link to where they can pick it up at.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything else, we can talk about it, but if you guys are good, we can probably wrap this one up.
I think we're good. I think we talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to seeing you down in Crawfordsville soon.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to being there.
If you haven't looked into it yet, I think they're still looking for vendors for the 2025 Evansville Horror Con. So I know that's kind of far away.
Yeah.
It's pretty big. It's in a giant convention center.
Yes.
So they had several thousand people there.
We go there a lot.
Yeah.
We go to the Raptor Con, the Horror Con, because it's just amazing. The people that are there and all the different people who are talking. And last time we went down and met Jason Hawes from Taps.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of fun.
We went because V. Neal was going to be there. And I don't know if you know who she is, but she is an iconic Hollywood makeup artist. She did like the makeup for Beetlejuice.
Okay.
Pirates of the Caribbean and stuff like that. And I just absolutely love her. She used to have a show on the Sci-Fi Channel called Face Off.
Oh, yeah. I remember that show.
Yeah. So we went down there to see her. And yeah, it was huge.
Yes.
Beetlejuice is one of my wife's favorites. So
I can't wait for the new movie.
She's super excited. It comes out right before her birthday. So I know what I'm doing her birthday weekend.
Hey, that's an easy birthday.
Well, I also just found this out before her birthday. By the time this ends up airing, it should be right around the same time, but she's wearing a Colts hoodie. I'm wearing a Colts hat. My son plays football. He's in 6th grade, and we found out that he's going to be playing at Lucas Oil Stadium again this year.
Awesome.
So they played last year. Like every so many years, they let the kids come there and play, but he broke his wrist last year.
Oh,
so his wrist got broke during football, so he didn't get to play at Lucas Oil. He was there, we took him, but he didn't actually get to play. So I'm hoping he don't break anything this year and he actually gets to play at Lucas Oil, because that's a cool thing for him, because he loves football. He used to love the Colts and everything. Now he's a Ravens fan for some reason. I don't know.
It happens.
My niece plays soccer. And her freshman year, as a freshman, she was the first and only freshman in her school to be invited to play on the varsity soccer team.
Awesome.
She's amazing. She is so good. 1 week into school, she broke her leg. So she did not get to play.
Yeah.
So she is very excited this year to be playing.
Yeah, he broke his wrist in the second game last year. And then I felt bad because I told him, suck it up, get back out there, you're fine. No, his wrist was broken.
Oh, I know how that is. I blew my shoulder out, ripped my shoulder completely in half, and my dad told me to get back on the court and literally put my shoulder, put the socket back for me on the bench, and taped up my shoulder and put me right back in the game with a torn rotor cuff. And I just dislocated that shoulder. We grew up in a time where that was much more likely to happen.
I've got scars on my legs and on my elbows and stuff that probably needed stitches, and I never went and got stitches. And I remember I broke my arm and I cried for about 7 hours before I ever got taken to the doctor because I was fine. So that's the era that we grew up in, is like,
nope, rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine.
My father broke his leg bowling. He went to go throw the ball down the lane and forgot to let go of the ball and just threw himself down the lane. And he ended up breaking his leg, and he finished the game and went home. It wasn't until the next morning when my mom saw it, and she's like, "Why did you not go to the hospital?" He's like, "I thought I was fine."
It was definitely a different age, than what it is nowadays. Now we go to the hospital for every little nook and cranny.
Yeah, there's always something going on, especially at this house. But I got 4 kids, so it's chaotic. So.
I'm the oldest of 7.
Yeah,
it's a mess.
Well, guys,
have a good evening.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And again, for anyone listening, make sure to check out the link in the show notes for get a copy of the book. And on October 26th, if you're around Crawfordsville, Indiana, if you want to make the trip up, make sure to check it out because it's free to the public.
Sounds great.
Well, thank you guys, and I hope you have a good night.
Yep, we'll see you then.
Night.
And that's the show, everyone. I really hope you guys enjoyed the conversations. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to the contact section of tinfoiltales.com. Just get your message to me. We'll get something scheduled for a future episode. And just remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.
Tinfoil Tales in the headphones. Yeah, it's time to rock. Got a story about a cryptic creature. Let's take a walk. Bigfoot, Dogman, they're out there in the dark. But the truth is out there like an alien spark. UFO sightings got the whole world shook. Conspiracies unfold like a story in a book. Media control, trying to keep us blind. But I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history, they don't want us to know the secrets they hide, the truth they won't show. Dominate our society, they keep us in chains. But I'm standing tall, it's time to break the reins. Control, trying to keep us blind. But I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history